Today we're going to talk about acrylic painting. Now last week I did a video about acrylic paint washes and actually how much water you can add to your acrylic paint before affecting the integrity of the paint. And so if you're interested in that video, check it out here. But this week I am going to demonstrate how to use those paint washes. So today we're going to be doing this kind of morning misty deer painting, and the techniques that I used for this one using those washes are I did the underpainting first, and so underpainting is where you just apply one color to the whole surface, and it really unifies your painting. So for this one I did the gold, and so I put the gold on my whole working surface, and then it because my layers after that are a little bit transparent, you can see some of that gold working through it, and it just unifies the whole look of the painting and makes it a little bit more pulled together and look like one piece versus distinct areas. These paintings behind me, I did the same things basically. I did the gray as my underpainting, and then even like through the brown of the drum and the violin, you can see some of those gray tones coming through. Again, it just unifies those paintings. Another technique is really, I did this later too, you can use it as color correction. So you can apply just a thin wash over another color to just change the tone or the value of that color a little bit. You can also use it to add shadows. I did not add shadows to this one because, again, this is like a morning misty look. You don't really see any of the shadows, but you could absolutely do a very thin wash of paint and just add like a shadow down from your subject. Nice soft edges with that, and you'll get a I guess not a defined shape. You'll get more of that soft edges of the shadow. So let's just get into how to do this painting and some of those wash techniques. I'm just gonna start with doing kind of a gradient for my background, and so I'm gonna go from kind of a lighter to darker, like brighter to darker, and I'm just gonna start by kind of making my first wash, and I'm just gonna add just a tiny bit of this gold paint, and then I'm just gonna kind of soak up a ton of water into it, and that's gonna make it super thin, but it'll give me that transparent effect that I'm going for. And I already do have one coat of the wash down, and that is from my previous video that you can check out up there for my how much water can you add to acrylic paints. So the answer is a ton. So we're just gonna kind of add on some more layers here and deepen it up a little bit, because you can see that first one was very, very, very light. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit more paint and kind of get a little bit deeper as we go. Now the bottom of this is gonna be covered with some, basically the ground. My horizon line is gonna be around here probably. So down here doesn't really matter that much. But up here, I'm just gonna kind of go from a darker to a lighter, and I'm gonna be adding trees and stuff to it, so it's gonna have some variety here. Now, when you're using acrylic paint washes, it's a lot like watercolor in terms of like it's really thin, it's transparent. You're moving it around, but it does dry pretty quickly, so you don't have a lot of working time to blend. So if you're going to be doing like a wet on wet technique where you want to add and blend the paint seamlessly, you need to work pretty quickly. But if you aren't, if you're doing a wet and dry technique, it's really nice because these layers do become a lot more permanent than if you're using watercolor. When you're using watercolor, you can pick that paint back up. With the acrylics, it'll stay permanent, and you won't be affecting the first layer when you add on the other layers. And it dries pretty quickly, so I can go to my next layer if I'm doing the wet on dry pretty quickly. So I'm pretty happy with that wash. It's a little bit lighter up here. It gets a little bit slightly darker down at the end, and I'll be building up more layers here as we go. So I'm gonna let that dry just a little bit. Okay, this has nothing to do with painting, but as I'm washing off this gold paint in my water, it's really kind of mesmerizing. I'm not sure if you can see the gold kind of flakes of metallic spinning around in there, but it's kind of soothing watching it. Anyway, so I think this is getting pretty dry now, so I'm gonna now do some of my brown. And so again, I'm gonna use some clean water, put it wherever, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna put it here and then add just a little bit of this like greenish brown color. I don't know if I'm in love with this color. We'll see once I get it on the paper how I like it. It's kind of green, I don't know, we'll see. Grayish. So kind of, there's where my horizon line is. And I'm gonna want it, oops, well, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna want it to be darker down at the bottom. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more paint down there. And so you can see I'm just working some straight paint into my already watered down wash here. And it's going to make it a little bit deeper, and then I can kind of drag it up if I want. I don't, or kind of push it down, so you can use different techniques. I don't love that color, so I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. I don't have black on my palette yet, but let me get some here. Whoop. Yeah, I just want it to be a little bit less of that green color. So again, just kind of getting some water. I already have a ton. This brush is really absorbent, so I have a ton of water on the brush already. And then I'm just gonna add some black here to my greenish color. You can see this is, so what I'm painting on here is actually watercolor paper, and so it is very absorbent. But it's also not the highest quality watercolor paper out there. It's just a piece from my sketchbook that I took out, so I may not get the most even washes. I do like that color a little bit better. Still not very dark down at the bottoms here. So let's just add in some paint to the bottom, and it's going to kind of pool down there, and I'm okay with that. Now, if you're having any issues with it getting too much, you can kind of like the same with watercolor. You can kind of just seep it up, and if you are concerned with just the amount of paint, just kind of tap it and it'll take some of it off. So basically, until this paint is dry, you can work with it. Once it's dry, it's permanent, so you can't, but until it's dry, you sure can. I'm gonna be doing on this side a tree like in the foreground coming all the way up, but then there's gonna be the appearance of some trees in the background, which you're really just gonna see like the shadowy misty leaves from. So I'm gonna start doing that, because up here is pretty dry, and it's kind of going to have this arching, and then the deer will go right here, so it's kind of framing the deer. So I'm going to start by adding some of those kind of background misty leaves back here. And so I'm going to use actually just that same gold color that I used in the background. And I'm going to do it just a little bit thicker than the background so that you can see it. And because I'm going to be putting the tree trunk on top of it, I can kind of just fill this space where I want that kind of background tree to go. And I'm using a fan brush for this just to create kind of some texture. And so you can see that this is going to look a little bit like just the mist and the sunlight shining off of these tree leaves. And I'm just going to kind of go up into it. Again, I'm going to add some more layers here, so some of this is going to be covered. I just need to make sure to leave room for my deer that's going to come right here, and just kind of make it look like it's some tree branches. Okay, and so there's my first layer, and then my next layer is going to be a little bit less dilute paint. Okay, and I'm going to put that kind of across here, and it's just going to be kind of that same technique. And then I'm going to go in and make these look a little bit darker and more brown, but you can see I'm like layering it up, right? So this tree is in front of that other tree, and it's a little bit darker of a value, more dense paint there. This one's a lot lighter. And then I'm just gonna see if I mix a little bit of black in with it. You can see that it kind of creates this golden brown, which I really like. So I'm just gonna add some of that in and hope that it looks okay on my paper, because I'm not testing it as I go, and it's a little bit dense. It's not giving me the enough water there. Okay, so I'm just adding some of that and putting that in. Okay, so you can kind of tell there that that is going to be a darker, more prominent visual feature, right, than this kind of background paint right there. So now I'm going to go in and rinse that off, and we're going to come in with my tree trunk. This is still pretty wet, so maybe I'll give it another few minutes. I'm just going to put some darker trees here. I'm just adding the tiniest bit of gold to this just to give it that metallic, I don't know, I want this painting to be metallic, so I'm just going to add that, and that's probably a little bit too watery. I'm not going to get the texture that I'm looking for. There we go. So again, these are still kind of washes, right? But I'm using a fan brush to make texture, even though my paint's pretty watery. And then I'm just gonna tap some of that off, because that's gonna be not gonna have enough control with that much paint. Okay, and then I'm just gonna put some leaves. Again, this tree is gonna come up around, and then it's gonna look like it's kind of arching around. So I'm gonna put some leaves here, and we'll just kind of, these are really dark, they're just silhouetted, and I'm not going for like a certain type of leaf. Obviously, I'm just kind of tapping in some texture, because this is not a photorealistic painting. This is just kind of loose representation of this subject matter. If you wanted to actually paint in leaves, from a specific type of tree, go for it. Now I'm gonna put my trunk here, but I'm just gonna put some kind of leafy texture. That way, if I just wanna add some branches, I can. Or if I wanna put the whole trunk, I can, it doesn't matter. I can decide later, right? So, I just kinda wanna bring this down a little bit more. Look like some's hanging down there. And then these ones are hanging down here. Okay, and then kind of fill this spot a little bit. I don't like how. I'll probably cover that with trunk because I'm not loving how that's looking, but that's okay. And just add some more thick, and then now I'm just going straight into my thick paint just to get the texture that I'm looking for there on some of these more defined spots. Okay, so I think I'm liking that. I'm liking that I'm going to put the deer here so he's framed. These are kind of coming down a little bit on the outside. You can see the texture there of my trees, right? They're looking leafy. Now I'm going to go back in and add my trunk. I'm just going to use a flat brush and I'm going to kind of sweep a trunk in there, and this is going to be definitely foreground. So I'm going to make it kind of that dense black paint because this is all about silhouette. So let me get quite a bit of my black paint, just loosen it up a tiny bit with water so that it'll flow. And then I'm thinking my tree is gonna kind of come here, and we're gonna kind of have a little bit of a jaggedy line because tree trunks are not straight, right? And then it gets a little bit smaller up here, and I'm just gonna basically fill that in with my black paint. And then I'll go back over it to deepen it up after. If you have some kind of, I don't know, bubbles is what I want to call them. That's not the right word, but if you have some bubbles out on the edge, some bumps, that's fine. Tree trunks aren't straight, right? So we're just going to kind of bring that up into where I had some of these leaves. Okay, and then that's tree trunk. And we'll come back in and add more paint to it later after it dries so that it's not gray and transparent. We want that to be a nice dense tree trunk, and then we can go in and add more leaves up here after too. We'll see. I'm gonna add the deer, but I might add another branch of this tree here. I don't know, it'll kind of depend what the deer does. And then I kind of decided that I just want to make this ground a little bit deeper and darker down here. So we're gonna add some paint, and then we'll come back in and do that with the tree trunk, but to make sure, you know, he's going the right direction. But let's just add some dark paint here. Again, I'm going to go back and deal with that tree trunk later. But we're going to kind of make a gradient here. And again, my ground does not have to be perfect. It can be a little bit bumpy, a little bit hilly on the top there. Okay, and then you want to make, oops, I just used my clean water to rinse my brush. Whatever. I have another clean water. See, that's why I do that. Multiple clean waters. Okay, so we are gonna kind of use this water to drag some of this paint up. And this is kind of a watercolor technique here where you're dragging this paint up. It's not dry yet. And we're pulling it up to make it look kind of misty, right? We don't have a solid line here where we're getting a distinct horizon line. We have kind of a gradient where we're washing it out because it's foggy, it's misty. We can't really see it really well defined, right? So I'm just gonna try to kind of blend that. Again, now I'm blending, the background's dry, so I'm blending this wet on dry, but I'm just kind of washing out the black to get that gradient. And I am pretty happy with that. But you can see that I didn't really affect this gold at all when I did that. And then I'm just gonna kind of change the direction of my brush strokes, right? Because I went back over this, where this tree trunk was for the ground, but I'm gonna make it look vertical. I need to wait for this to dry. Sometimes I get impatient and I don't, but I need to wait for this to dry before I can put in my deer. And I didn't draw him in advance. This is going to be a buck. I didn't draw him in advance, so I'm just kind of winging it. I do have a reference photo for my deer silhouette, but we're just going to kind of wing it and we'll see how he turns out. It's getting close to being dry now, and I'm going to figure out where I want the top of this guy's antlers, or yeah, antlers, and then kind of where I want the top of his head. So he's gonna be kind of blending into this background. So his legs are coming up from kind of my actual horizon line, which is here, and then he's kind of blending into the background, and so his legs maybe end here, body starts right here. So this is probably gonna be where his body is, and then his head is just right above that. So here's probably the top of his head right here. So I'm gonna just get the tiniest bit of black and kind of mark that where I want the top of his head. Now I'm not gonna be able to go back in and rearrange this, so you know, I'm just kind of hoping for the best here. So that's where the top of his head is gonna be. And then we're gonna have kind of down like that, and then he has ears coming out the side, and they kind of come out like that, and like that. Now, I usually do draw my design first, but I didn't this time. Okay, now I'm gonna do some antlers. So it's just kind of a loose antler. We kind of coming up, and then they're kind of like trees, right? So they kind of come off. I'm gonna switch brushes for the antlers. Let's get my little thinner round brush. Okay, so we have that coming up out of his head, right? And then there's gonna be one coming up out of his head over here too. So we'll put that one in and put that one in. Okay, and then we have some different stuff coming off of his antlers. Okay, so, and these, they don't grow symmetrically necessarily, so they don't have to be perfectly symmetrical or anything. We just have to get the general idea of antlers. So his antler is going to come off here, and we're going to come up and kind of come out and around. Okay, so we kind of have this. My paint's not all the way dry yet down here. Try to avoid touching it. Okay, and then again, I'm working off a reference photo, so I'm kind of got the general idea of what these antlers could look like, but and then I'm kind of making it up on top of that. So we have kind of here, and again, there isn't anything that has to be perfect. They just kind of grow. And they have different kind of stuff shooting off of them, right? I don't know. I'm not a hunter or a observer of much wildlife, so I can't say that I really know what is going on with their antlers, just that they have them and they kind of grow like trees. So we're going to kind of come up to about the same height, and we're going to sweep it down to his head. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of come up and do some branching off of that. Sure, why not? Okay, I don't know if they grow like that, but I'm going to do a little branch off of that. And then we'll do some branches like this. And kind of one over here. From what I can tell, they more come in than go out, but I don't know. I'm just kind of making that up. But that's what it looks like. So, okay, that one's a lot taller, so I'm just gonna kind of make one coming up here so that's taller. Okay, they're kind of different, but that's okay. It is what it is. Okay, so there's his antlers. Now we're gonna come back and do kind of his ears and his face. Now, since we're doing a silhouette, we're gonna end up kind of filling this in. So I'm gonna do like this. Okay, there's his ear. Okay, and then his other ear will come out this way. Kind of come up and come around. There he is. Got a cute little ear. Okay. And then again, this is silhouette, so you can't really see his face so much, but we're gonna put it in anyway. And we're just gonna kind of do like a little rounded triangle shape. He kind of looks like a sheep right now, but you know, the antlers, they aren't sheep horns, so we'll go with it. He does look a little like a sheep. Okay, that's okay. Now we're gonna do body. Okay, so again, got a silhouette body, and his body's kind of coming out here, and we kind of come around. Okay, I think my deer is gonna be smaller than I had originally thought, but that's okay. So here is his body, and it's gonna come down to his legs. So maybe he's gonna be standing a little farther back. And then this side, we are gonna do a little bit, almost the same shape, but a little different. Maybe he's standing at a little bit of an angle, and this one's gonna come down into his legs like that. Okay. And then kind of just fill him in. And we'll get down to his legs next. You can definitely change brushes and use a larger one to fill them in. It doesn't matter. I just don't feel like changing brushes. Be faster though. Okay, I'm gonna turn him over to do this part. And I'll go over this later to get it darker too. I'm just kind of getting my first pass in. Okay, now we have to do some legs, and we're gonna kind of bring them down to here, and they're a little bit knobby, right? Because he's got knees and stuff, so just make it a little bit knobby, not perfectly straight. And then we have his back one back here, and then we have his other side, which will be coming down like something like this, I guess. And again, a little bit knobby. And then maybe you can't really see his other leg too much. It's kind of there. Okay. Good enough. Right. Okay. And because he ended up higher and smaller than I thought, I'll darken this up and put some more ground underneath him. Because I want to go back in and deepen up that ground. I'm going to do that now. This is gray, so that's fine. I want to add in some more paint down here and deepen it up. And so again, I'm starting darker and I'm doing a little bit of a gradient, and I don't care if I wash out his legs a little bit, because that's kind of the point of me doing this, is I don't really want to see his legs because they look stupid. They don't look stupid. They just aren't, you know, the most anatomically correct. And I'm just going to kind of wash out his legs so that you can't really see them as much. And we're going to kind of just do a little bit of a gradient, right? Okay, so then it looks a little bit strong on my line here. Instead of being a nice soft transition, we're gonna, oopsie, well, that's okay. I can go back in and add more later, right? I want to make it a little bit softer, even kind of in between his legs, and kind of add some texture there, right? Maybe it's some grass or something there. Okay, let me clean off my brush again and get rid of what I just messed up there. So again, until it dries, you can manipulate it, right? Once it dries, not so much, but until it dries, you can manipulate it. Okay, there we go. Pretty happy with that. And I actually am okay with my little deer. He's not perfect, but he's okay. He's great. We don't shoot for perfection when we're painting. Well, I don't. I don't know if you do. Okay, let me darken up his ears. Now again, we're drying pretty fast, right? So I can go in with my next layer here and darken him up a little bit. And get his face there. So because it's all just a silhouette, I'm not really defining. You're not going to be able to see a lot where his face is versus his body. So I'm trying to use brush strokes to define it and make like a little bit of a texture at the bottom of his head too, just to define that just a little bit. But it doesn't really matter because silhouettes, you can't really see those definitions anyway, right? And then I'm just going to darken up his antlers a little bit here, trying not to make them all too thick or anything, just kind of adding some extra depth to them there. And then, okay, I'm getting messy, but that's okay. This one is nice and tall there. Okay, yeah, I like it. Okay, so there's my deer. Again, super quick, did not draw it first, so if you hate it, I don't care. I kind of like it. It's a loose, little, quick deer. And then I'm gonna add some more paint to my tree. I need more black paint on my palette. I significantly underestimated the amount of black I was gonna use. I thought I was going to use more of this brownish green, and then I decided I didn't like it, so I didn't use it. Okay, let's use this black. And now I'm just going in with basically pure black. I'm not watering it down here. And I'm kind of going to go for I'm going to get my tree a little bigger at the bottom here. Okay. And then we're going to thicken it up. There we go. Okay. Okay, and then up here, kind of the same thing. Now I'm just going for my, deepening those colors. Not as transparent. Okay, there's my tree. Then I'm gonna add some branches to it. I'm gonna use this round brush, get it loaded with my paint, and I'm gonna put in some tree branches coming off of this trunk. And so I want one kind of here. I'm just gonna kind of use the weight of the brush, drag it out, and then get it thinner. And I can go back in later and, make these branches not look so transparent. And if I want to do just a little bit, maybe, okay. And then, so when you're painting trees, I've heard to think about it like Ys, right? So there's my Y coming off. Now up here, I'm going to have another Y coming off, and this one's going to come off kind of in the same direction, and we're not straight. Our tree branches are not just straight sticking out. They can have some undulation to them. Now, this is right at the top of my paper, right? So I'm going to come back and think about that branch is going to come back around, and I'm just kind of thinking that's the same branch, so it's going to be thinner out here, and it's the one that's giving these extra leaves. And then I'm going to do some Ys off of it. So you're not going to see this because that's where my tape is, right? But we're going to kind of Y off of this stuff. Okay, there it is. And then we're going to do the same thing up here. Do kind of, I have my longer one coming out this way, and then I'm doing a Y off this way, and then I'm going to do a Y down here and get some extra little branches out. And these don't have to be perfect. Trees are not perfect, right? And then this one I'm going to say has like a thicker one coming off this way. Okay. And then up that way. And then now you can't really see this main trunk anymore. And let me go in. Now, again, this dries pretty fast, so I can go in and make these a little bit darker now. And trying to keep them nice and thin out here toward the edges, right? Good. I don't know, I'm telling myself good. Good job, Ashley. You're doing great. Self-talk, right? Turns out I talk to myself a lot. Okay. Anyway, there's my tree. Okay, beautiful. Now I'm gonna go in and add some more leaves, right? Because now all my leaves are behind my tree branches, which doesn't really make sense. So we're gonna add some more leaves. I'm gonna load up. I like to use my fan brush for leaves. Now you don't have to, you can use whatever you want. But I like to take off some of the extra paint, and I'm just gonna tap some more leaves around my branches. So I like to do some leaves first. It kind of gets me out of having like a calculated tree. I find if I put little clumps of leaves around, then I can visualize where my branches are going to go, and they're not as like symmetrical and I don't know, weird looking, right? Not natural. Whereas if I put some of the leaves in first, I can be a little bit looser with where I put my branches, and it just helps me do it that way. And then it also looks like some of the leaves are behind the branches, which that's how they grow, right? The leaves don't all grow in front perspective wise of the branches. So I can do this, and then like here I didn't have any of these leaves. I'm gonna go ahead and add some just at the end here, these little branches, just to kind of fill the space. Like you said, I might add some more later because of my deer didn't go up as high as I kind of had originally planned. And so I'm just kind of gonna fill it a little bit more. Nah, I have too much paint on my brush, but that's okay. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm gonna add, just keep adding some more. In this spot, it's gonna be pretty dense because like all of these trees that are behind it are culminating in this spot. So I'm gonna add a lot of leaves here. But it's not all the exact same thickness of paint. Some of them are more transparent than others, so you can still see a little bit of what's going on behind it, just not very much, right? I just want a little bit of texture to come over my tree also. Okay, I'm probably getting carried away, but that's okay. Let me kind of use the side of my fan brush here to get some stuff out here. Okay, all right, so I think that's pretty much it on the leaves, right? You can see it's just kind of messy and there, and that's what trees are. They aren't perfect and symmetrical or anything, so they are kind of messy. Now I'm gonna go in. I'm kind of liking my ground. I'm kind of happy with it. Maybe it's messy, but that's okay. I like it. But I am gonna go in and add a little bit more paint to my tree trunk here. There we go. There is my misty morning sunrise deer. Looks like there's the sun glowing behind him. Thank you so much for watching the tutorial on how to use acrylic paint washes to make this morning misty deer painting. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and check out some other videos on my channel. I have some other painting tutorials for more watercolor, but more acrylic stuff will be coming, so just keep an eye out. And it was great just talking to you today. I hope you leave a comment so I know who I'm talking to. So I hope you come back. Thanks. Have a good day.